Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button because today's story is one of the most intense I've ever shared. Grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let me tell you about the Christmas that changed everything. My name is Grace Carter. I'm 34 years old, and 1 year ago, my family tried to erase me and my daughter from existence. They failed. Before I tell you how I dismantled their perfect little world, you need to understand what that world looked like from the outside. The Carter family farm sits on 200 acres of prime land in rural Wisconsin. It's been in our family for 4 generations. Picture rolling hills, a red barn that photographs like a postcard, and a farmhouse with a wraparound porch where my grandmother used to shell peas in the summer. From the outside, we were the American dream. From the inside, we were a nightmare dressed in matching Christmas sweaters. My mother, Barbara, ran the family like a corporation. Image was everything. The farm had evolved from agriculture into agritourism, wedding venues, pumpkin patches, Christmas tree lots. We were a brand now, and Barbara protected that brand with iron control. My brother Jake was the golden son. At 38, he'd never worked a real job outside the farm, but somehow he was positioned as the heir apparent. He had our mother's cruelty and our father's charm, which made him dangerous. My sister Hannah was 31 and had perfected the art of performative sweetness. She smiled while twisting the knife. She agreed with whatever Barbara said and collected the rewards. Then there was me, the middle child, the one who left, and my daughter, Lily. She was 7 years old that Christmas. She had my late husband's eyes and my stubborn streak. She was the reason I'd stayed away for 3 years. She was also the reason they hated me. See, when I married David, my family disapproved. He wasn't from money. He wasn't from land. He was a high school teacher who treated me like I mattered. When he died in a car accident 2 years into our marriage, I was pregnant with Lily. My mother's first words when I called her from the hospital weren't condolences, they were, "Well, at least you can come home now." I didn't go home. I built a life in Minneapolis instead. I worked as an accountant. I raised my daughter. I healed. But that Christmas, Barbara reached out. She said she wanted reconciliation. She said the family wasn't complete without me. She said Lily deserved to know her heritage. I believed her. That was my first mistake. We arrived on Christmas Eve. The farm looked magical, lights wrapped around fence posts, snow blanketing the fields, smoke curling from the chimney. Lily's face lit up like I hadn't seen in months. "Mommy, it's like a movie," she whispered. I squeezed her hand. "It is, baby." The first night went smoothly. Too smoothly. Barbara was warm. Jake was charming. Hannah complimented my dress. I felt myself relaxing, wondering if I'd been wrong about them. I hadn't been wrong. I'd been set up. Christmas dinner started at 6. The table was immaculate, white linens, crystal glasses, a golden turkey that Barbara had definitely not cooked herself. We sat down, grace was said, and then the masks came off. It started with Jake. He was 3 glasses of wine in when he looked at Lily and said, "So, you're the reason Grace thinks she's too good for us now?" Lily froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. "Jake," I warned. "What? I'm just asking." He smiled that predator smile. "She shows up with a kid nobody asked for and expects us to play happy family?" Barbara said nothing. She just sipped her wine. "Mom," I said, "are you going to—" "Grace, don't make a scene." Hannah laughed. Actually laughed. That's when Jake stood up. He walked to the corner of the dining room where 2 black trash bags sat, bags I'd assumed were for garbage, for recycling, for anything but what they were actually for. He picked them up and threw them at my feet. They thudded against the hardwood floor. The sound echoed in the suddenly silent room. "Those are your things," Jake said. "The stuff you left when you ran off to marry that nobody. Mom was going to donate them, but I figured you'd want to take your trash with you when you leave." Lily started to cry. I felt my hands shaking, not from fear, from rage. "Jake, we just got here. And now you're leaving." He leaned down, his face inches from mine. "You're not family anymore, Grace. You made that choice when you picked him over us." I looked at my mother. She was examining her napkin. "Mom." She looked up. And what she said next broke something inside me that I didn't know could still break. "Honestly, Grace, you and that kid don't belong here. Having Lily was a mistake. Everyone knows it. You should have dealt with it when you had the chance." My 7-year-old daughter heard her grandmother call her a mistake. I watched Lily's face crumble. I watched the light leave her eyes. And something inside me went completely cold. Hannah snickered. This is so awkward. I stood slowly. I picked up the trash bags. I took Lily's hand. She was trembling. Get your coat, baby, I said quietly. As I walked toward the door, Jake called out, Don't forget to take your garbage with you. I stopped at the threshold. I didn't turn around. I'll remember this, I said. My voice was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that should have terrified them. Every word, every laugh, every tear on my daughter's face. Then I walked into the snow and closed the door behind me. They thought that was the end of the story. They were wrong. That was the beginning. The nearest motel was 45 minutes away. I drove through the snow in silence, Lily asleep in the back seat, tear tracks still visible on her cheeks. I pulled into the Pinewood Motor Lodge at 9:47 p.m. on Christmas night. The parking lot was nearly empty. The vacancy sign buzzed red in the darkness. The room was small. 2 twin beds, a television from 2004, wallpaper peeling near the bathroom. It smelled like industrial cleaner and old cigarettes. It was the safest place we'd be in all day. I tucked Lily in. She murmured something in her sleep. I brushed the hair from her forehead and felt that cold rage crystallize into something sharper. Purpose. I stepped onto the concrete walkway outside our room. The snow had stopped. The night was silent except for the hum of the ice machine down the hall. I called Claire. Claire had been my best friend since college. She was a paralegal now, sharp as a scalpel and twice as precise. She answered on the second ring despite it being nearly midnight on Christmas. Grace, I thought you were doing the family thing. They threw trash bags at us, I said. My voice was flat. My mother called Lily a mistake, to her face. Silence. Say that again. I told her everything. The dinner, the bags thudding against the floor, Jake's words, Barbara's cruelty, Hannah's laughter, the snow, the drive. When I finished, Claire's voice was shaking with anger. Grace, listen to me carefully. This is abuse. This is abuse with tinsel and a Christmas tree, but it's still abuse. You understand that, right? I closed my eyes. I know. Good. Because now we're going to do something about it. I don't know what I can do. They have the farm, the money, the image. They have a brand, Claire interrupted. And brands are fragile. What else do they have? I thought about it. The farm's success. The wedding venue bookings. The social media presence Barbara maintained obsessively. The local newspaper features every harvest season. Their reputation, I said slowly. That's everything to them. Then that's their weakness. I felt the first spark of something that might have been hope. There's something else, I said. Something they don't know I have. Tell me. 4 years ago, during one of my rare visits, I'd noticed discrepancies in the farm's books, numbers that didn't add up, money moving to accounts that shouldn't exist. I'd asked Barbara about it, and she dismissed me with a wave of her hand. But I'd been suspicious. So I'd done something I'd never told anyone about. I'd recorded a conversation. Wisconsin is a one-party consent state. I knew that from work. So when Barbara sat me down to discuss family business, I'd pressed record on my phone. In that recording, Barbara admitted that she'd altered our late father's will. She admitted that the farm was supposed to be split equally among all 3 children. She admitted that she'd forged documents to give herself controlling interest. Grace, Claire breathed. Do you still have it? I have it backed up in 3 places: cloud storage, external drive, and a safety deposit box. You beautiful paranoid genius. I almost smiled. Almost. There's more, I said. When Dad died, I was barely 18. They had me sign things. Estate documents, they said. I didn't read them carefully. I trusted them. What did you sign? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. The next morning, I called a lawyer named Mark. He'd handled David's estate after the accident, and I trusted him. I told him what I suspected. Let me pull some records, he said. If what you're describing is accurate, you may have been defrauded of your inheritance. 2 weeks later, Mark called back. Grace, you need to come to my office. When I arrived, he slid a folder across his desk. Your father's original will left the farm equally to you, your brother, and your sister. But 6 months after his death, a new document appeared. An amendment that transferred your share to a family trust controlled by your mother. And I signed it? Your signature is on it. But Grace," he pointed to the date. "This was supposedly signed on March 15th, 2015. I felt the blood drain from my face. That's the day David died. I was in a hospital in Minneapolis. I wasn't even in the state." Mark nodded. "They forged your signature to steal your inheritance." The room tilted. All those years, all that exclusion, all those comments about how I'd abandoned the family, how I didn't deserve anything because I'd left. They'd stolen from me, and then made me feel guilty for being robbed. "What can I do?" Mark leaned forward. "We can fight this, but I need to be honest. It'll be ugly. They'll use everything against you. Every mistake, every rumor. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about Lily's face crumbling. I thought about trash bags hitting the floor. I thought about my mother's voice saying mistake. "I'm prepared," I said. "But I don't just want to fight them. What do you want?" "I want to win. I want them to feel exactly what they made my daughter feel, and then I want to make sure they can never do it to anyone else." Mark smiled slowly. "Then let me tell you about a strategy." The next 6 months were the hardest of my life. I worked. I raised Lily. And in every spare moment, I planned. Claire helped me set up an anonymous social media account. No names, no faces, just stories. Stories about family betrayal. Stories about inheritance fraud. Stories about children being told they were mistakes. The audience grew. Slowly at first. Then faster. I never identified my family. I didn't have to. The stories resonated because they were true, because so many people had lived versions of them. Comments poured in. Messages from strangers who understood. A community forming around something raw and real. The account hit 50,000 followers. Then 100,000. The Carter family farm's social media had 12,000, and that's when Mark called with the final piece of the puzzle. "Grace, I found something interesting. The farm is carrying significant debt. They took out a loan 3 years ago to build the new event barn. It's held by a regional bank. And that debt note is about to be sold. The bank is offloading underperforming rural loans." "Underperforming? But their business is booming." "On paper, yes. But someone's been cooking the books. The loan payments have been inconsistent. The bank doesn't want the headache." I understood immediately. "Can I buy it?" "Hypothetically, yes, if you had the capital and moved quickly." I did the math. My savings, David's life insurance, my share of the settlement from the accident. It was exactly enough. Make it happen. 4 months later, I held a document that changed everything. It was a simple piece of paper, really. Legal size, clean typeface, but the words on it represented power that my family never imagined I could possess. I owned the Carter family farm's debt. The purchase was quiet. Anonymous, actually. Mark set up an LLC with a name that revealed nothing. The bank was happy to offload the note. My family had no idea the ground had shifted beneath their feet, but I wasn't ready to strike yet. Not quite. Because this wasn't about money anymore. It wasn't even about inheritance. It was about Lily. It was about every child who'd ever been called a mistake. It was about accountability. And for accountability to mean anything, it had to happen publicly. The farm's biggest event was their fall harvest festival, 3 days in late September. Hay raids, pumpkin patches, a corn maze that Barbara redesigned every year to match whatever was trending. Local news covered it. Politicians showed up for photo ops. It was the crown jewel of their brand. I bought tickets online like any other visitor. 2 adults, Claire insisted on coming, and 1 child. Lily was 8 now. A year had passed since that Christmas. She'd done therapy. We talked about what happened. She understood, in the way children understand, that her grandmother had been cruel and that cruelty wasn't her fault. "Are you sure you want to go back?" I'd asked her. She'd looked at me with those serious eyes, her father's eyes, and nodded. "I want to see you win, Mommy." I almost cried. The drive took 4 hours. The farm looked different in autumn. Golden instead of white, the trees blazing orange and red. Visitors streamed through the gates. Children laughed on the hay rides. The scent of apple cider hung in the air. Perfect postcard. Rotten core. We walked through the crowds like any other family. I wore sunglasses and a hat. Claire had a camera around her neck playing tourist. Lily held my hand and looked around with wide eyes. "It's different than I remember," she said. "It is, baby." We approached the main farmhouse at noon. The event was in full swing. Food vendors lined the path. A local band played country covers on a makeshift stage, and on the porch of the farmhouse, holding court like royalty, stood my mother. Barbara looked older, harder. She wore an expensive sweater and jeans that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. She was laughing with someone, a donor probably, or a local official, performing warmth she'd never actually felt. Jake was nearby, directing staff with the irritation of someone who believed himself above manual labor. Hannah floated between groups, champagne glass in hand, playing the gracious hostess. They hadn't seen me yet. Claire squeezed my arm. Ready? Almost. I watched them for another minute, watched the performance, watched the smiles that never reached their eyes, watched my mother charm people who had no idea what she was capable of. Then I removed my sunglasses. I walked toward the porch. The crowd seemed to part around me, though that was probably my imagination. Lily stayed close, Claire right behind her. Jake saw me first. His face went through a fascinating sequence of emotions: confusion, recognition, alarm. He straightened, wineglass frozen halfway to his lips. Grace? Barbara turned, and for one satisfying moment I saw pure fear in my mother's eyes. What are you doing here? She hissed. You're not welcome. I bought a ticket, I said calmly, just like everyone else. Hannah appeared at Barbara's shoulder. Oh my God, are you serious right now? After everything. After everything? What, Hannah? After you threw trash at my daughter? After Mom called her a mistake? Nearby visitors were starting to notice. Heads turning, phones appearing. Barbara's smile became fixed. Dangerous. This is not the time or place. Actually, I said, it's the perfect time and place. You love an audience, Mother, so let me give you one. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. The same folder Mark had given me almost a year ago. I added a new document on top. Do you know what this is? Jake stepped forward. Grace, whatever game you're playing. No game. I met his eyes. This is the deed of trust on this farm, the debt note your mother took out to build that barn. I pointed to the gleaming structure behind them. The one the bank sold 3 months ago. Barbara's face went pale. That's not possible. It's very possible. I smiled. Cold. Controlled. Because I bought it. I own your debt. I own you. The silence that followed was better than I'd imagined. Visitors were definitely recording now. I could see phone screens glowing in my peripheral vision. This would be on the internet within the hour. Good. Jake found his voice first. You're bluffing. Mark, I called. My attorney emerged from the crowd. He'd arrived separately, waiting for my signal. He walked to my side and handed Barbara a legal envelope. Mrs. Carter, I'm Mark Stevens, counsel for your daughter Grace. This is formal notice of debt collection and intent to foreclose if certain conditions are not met. Barbara's hands shook as she took the envelope. She didn't open it. This is insane, Hannah sputtered. You can't just... I can. I stepped closer to my mother, close enough to see the makeup creasing in the lines of her face, close enough to see the fear she was desperately trying to hide. Last Christmas, you threw my daughter away like garbage. You called her a mistake. You tried to erase us from this family. I leaned in. I told you I'd remember. Did you think I was joking? The crowd had grown. Festival goers formed a loose circle around the porch, phones raised. The performance my family loved so much now capturing their humiliation instead. Barbara found her voice. It was smaller than I'd ever heard it. Grace, let's discuss this privately. No. The word cut through the air. You don't get private. You had private for 30 years, and you used it to abuse your children and steal their inheritance. That's not. I have Dad's original will. I have the forged amendment. I have a recording of you admitting to it. Jake made it sound like he'd been punched. That's inadmissible, Hannah said desperately. Recordings aren't. Wisconsin is a one-party consent state. Claire called from behind me. And Grace was the party. I loved Claire so much in that moment. Barbara's composure finally cracked. Her eyes started to the crowd, calculating, always calculating. What do you want? She whispered. Money? The farm? Fine. Take it. Just stop this. I shook my head slowly. I don't want your money. I don't want your farm. Then what? I reached back and took Lily's hand. I guided her forward, my daughter who'd spent a year healing from wounds my mother had inflicted. My daughter who was braver than any of them. I want you to apologize to her." Barbara stared. "Right now, in front of everyone. I want you to tell my daughter that she is not a mistake, that she is wanted, that she belongs. You can't be serious. I own your debt." My voice hardened. "I can call it due tomorrow. You'll lose this farm, your home, your precious brand. Everything you built on lies will disappear. I let that sink in. Or you can apologize to an 8-year-old girl. Your choice." The silence stretched. I could hear the distant music from the festival, incongruously cheerful. I could hear the wind in the trees. Barbara looked at Jake, at Hannah, at the crowd of strangers with their recording phones. Then she looked at Lily. And my mother, the woman who had controlled everything for so long, knelt down in the dirt of her own farm. "Lily," she said. Her voice cracked. "I am sorry. I was wrong. You are not a mistake. You are wanted. You belong." The words came out stiff, unwilling, but they came out. Lily looked at me. I nodded. She looked back at her grandmother. "Okay," she said simply, and then she turned and walked back to Claire. That was all. Just okay. But it was everything. I wasn't done. "Mark," I said. He stepped forward with another set of documents. "These are the terms. First, my inheritance will be restored. 1/3 ownership of this property, calculated from date of original wrongful transfer, plus interest." Barbara flinched but didn't argue. "Second, a trust fund will be established for Lily, funded by the farm's profits, administered independently. She will never depend on your goodwill. Third, legal boundaries. You will not contact us without written consent. You will not discuss us publicly. You will not come within 50 miles of our home." I paused. "And fourth, I retain controlling interest in the debt note. Any violation of these terms, any contact, any attempt at retaliation, and I foreclose. Immediately. No second chances." Mark held out a pen. Barbara's hand trembled as she took it. "This is blackmail," Jake muttered. "No," I said. "This is accountability. You abused your power for 30 years. You stole. You lied. You hurt a child." I looked at each of them in turn. My brother who'd thrown trash at my daughter. My sister who'd laughed. My mother who'd called her a mistake. "I'm not destroying you. I'm holding you accountable. There's a difference." Barbara signed. Jake signed, his jaw clenched with fury. Hannah signed with tears streaming down her face. Mark collected the documents. "It's done," he said quietly. But I had one more thing to say. I turned to the crowd. The phone still recording. The strangers who would carry this story into the world. My name is Grace Carter. Some of you might follow an account that's been sharing stories about family betrayal and survival. That account is mine. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I started it because I needed people to understand what happens behind closed doors. How families can weaponize love. How inheritance becomes a tool for control. How children are made to feel like burdens for existing. I looked back at my family, standing defeated on the porch of their perfect farmhouse. I came back here today to prove something. Not to them, they'll never really understand. But to everyone who's ever been told they were too much or not enough. To every child who was called a mistake. Lily appeared at my side. She slipped her hand into mine. "You are not the problem," I said. "And you don't have to accept cruelty just because it comes from family." I squeezed my daughter's hand. "We're not just visitors anymore," I said. "We're owners. Of our story. Of our future. Of everything they tried to take." I turned my back on the farm, and I walked away, my daughter beside me, into the golden afternoon light. 6 months later, I sat on the porch of our new house. It wasn't a farmhouse. Just a small craftsman in a Minneapolis suburb with a good school district and neighbors who waved when they walked by. Lily was inside doing homework. Claire was visiting for the weekend. Mark had just called to confirm that the Carter farm had made its quarterly payment into Lily's trust. The anonymous account had evolved into something else, a nonprofit now, helping adults who'd been financially abused by family members. We had lawyers who worked pro bono. We had resources. We had community. I never took control of the farm. That wasn't the point. The point was that I could. The point was that they knew I could. Power isn't just what you use. It's what you hold. And forgiveness? People ask me if I've forgiven them. They expect a neat answer. Redemption arcs make for better stories. But here's what I've learned. Forgiveness isn't about them. It's about whether you're still carrying their weight. I'm not. I set down the burden of their approval. I stopped trying to earn love from people incapable of giving it. I built something new instead of burning the old. That's my version of forgiveness. Not absolution. Liberation. Lily came outside with 2 glasses of lemonade. She handed me one and sat in the chair beside mine. Mom? Yeah, baby. I'm glad you're my mom. I pulled her close and kissed the top of her head. I'm glad you're my daughter. We sat there as the sun went down, 2 people who'd survived something ugly and come out the other side. Not unchanged, but whole. That's the end of the story. Or maybe it's the beginning. And that's it for today's story. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. If this resonated with you, if you've ever had to choose yourself over family, if you've ever had to tear something down to build something new, I want to hear from you. Drop your story in the comments below. And if you're going through something like this right now, remember, you are not a mistake. You deserve better. And it's never too late to reclaim what's yours. Make sure you like this video if it moved you. Subscribe if you haven't already. We share stories like this every week. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next one. Now tell me, where are you watching from? What time is it where you are? I love seeing this community spread around the world. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Protect your peace. And remember, sometimes the best revenge is simply becoming someone they can't ignore. See you in the next one.